All right, what's up, my brothers from another mother? I'm on with Rollo Tomassi of the Rational Mail series. We're going to be going through a bunch of questions today on Q&A that I solicited through some social media platforms. Those of you that are familiar with Rollo need no introduction. Those that aren't, I'm going to leave some links in the description below for his work, to his books and to his blog. Rollo's a red pill pioneer and a guy that I can say for myself personally has opened my eyes to the way the world works. And I know he's woken up a lot of guys that have been sleepwalking through their life as well. So we're going to get a bunch of questions today. Leave a comment below and smash the like button and show this to somebody that might need to see it. All right, Rollo. So, we've been hearing a lot about this, Hollywood sexual misconduct lately. It's one person after the other that's falling. This morning when I was up drinking my coffee, I'm on my phone and I'm reading about Charlie Sheen, having sex with a 13-year-old boy, one of the Corey Haim or something like that. And then literally just as I got on the call, I got an email from somebody in another message saying, hey, do a video on, CK Lewis and, his misconducts and stuff. And it's like, one guy's falling down after the other. As a guy that writes in the manosphere and is very red-pilled and understands the way that human dynamics work, I think people would love to hear your opinion and view on that.
I've been asked a couple of times about this. If you look at my most recent post, it's called The Creep, and it's actually going to be a series of posts that I'm working on right now. And I will say that it was in some way inspired by the Harvey Weinstein situation that's going on, and how we see in Hollywood right now a lot of these women coming forward and saying, oh, so-and-so raped me, 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And I think there's a lot to really unpack about that. I think probably the first thing, or probably the thing that most listeners are going to want to know is, like, how do you get a guy like Harvey Weinstein? How do you get a guy like Louis CK? I mean, how do you get a guy like this? I'm not even really sure. There's so many of them right now, I can't even really sort it out. But how does that guy come into being? And I think a lot of guys were really kind of surprised when it comes to a guy like Harvey Weinstein, who is this Hollywood mogul who has a lot of money and a lot of influence, and has been able to sort of live his sexual, perversions, for lack of a better term, out for himself. And what I would say is that when you get a guy who is like that, when you get a guy who is sort of in what I call a beta mindset, and you give him unlimited power, that is not going to necessarily turn that guy suddenly into this alpha male or suddenly into this red pill aware guy. It's going to end up exacerbating that guy's mindset and that guy's idea of what game should be. So game to Harvey Weinstein, or game to Louis CK, or game to these guys who are, jerking off into, planners or whatever. I'm like, who the fuck is this, right? And so guys who are doing that, you're looking at, especially like a guy like Louis C.K., when you look at the guy and you listen to his comedy and you listen to some of the writing. I just just read an article about how one of his shows just got canceled because now that these allegations have come out that he's in some way a pedophile, they go and they finally do a little bit more, insightful critique of the work and the material that he's done. And you go back and you look at some of the stuff, or even Kevin Spacey for that matter.
Right.
You look at Kevin Spacey being gay is the worst kept secret in Hollywood. I mean, the dude's been gay. I mean, if you watch House of Cards, the dude's gay. I mean,
yeah.
It's no, and you know what? And should that disqualify him from anything? I don't know. I'm not going to be the one to make that call, but I will say that pedophilia certainly does. And when Milo Yiannopoulos came out and said, there's a difference between a pedophile and a homosexual. Well, that's not something that I'm really qualified to comment on. But I think that you're still talking about a guy or a mindset that's still wrapped up in this beta way of thinking and this beta way of interacting with women. And so guys sort of get themselves into the path of least resistance. And so if they have a preference for a certain type of woman, or if they have a preference for a certain way to go about becoming, sexual or intimate with a person or with a woman, they're going to keep going back to that and going back to that until somebody says, A, that's wrong, or B, they get themselves into trouble, whether it's through, a divorce or a really bad marriage of some sorts, or it's from somebody like what's going on with Louis, Louis CK, whatever, you're looking at a guy who keeps going back to his same watering hole. He goes back to his same behavior set, only you give him the money to exercise that. You don't give him any kind of incentive not to do that anymore. And I think that a lot of guys, particularly when they get into like a beta way of thinking, they are in some ways forced to have what we call a red pill awakening, where they have to be brought pretty low and to sort of, reconsider what their game is.
So let me ask you this question then. Sorry to interrupt. You've said, beta quite a few times now during this kind of topic, and I'm starting to wonder in my head, are all these guys that are being shone under this light Hollywood betas? Like I've said before that, if you want to see who somebody really is, get them drunk or give them a shit ton of money. What I've heard you say is that, a lot of these guys have a lot of power, which is attractive, obviously, on the sexual marketplace. Is it just that this power is just magnifying beta behavior?
I think so. I think that we talk a lot in the manosphere about how if a guy is a natural alpha, he doesn't have any real incentive or any sort of prompt to make him become insightful about why his game is successful and why what he's doing is successful with women. So there's no real prompt for that. I think that for guys like Louis CK, who I would definitely say is beta, if you ever listen to any of his comedy or any of his, especially when he talks about bringing up kids or marriage, you could tell that the guy is just saturated in this feminine primacy, and the guy really pities himself. I can tell just from his material that the guy is very self-pitying and very gender-loathing. Mm-hmm. But you take a guy like that, and it's very similar to the alpha who has no incentive to change or to sort of look inwardly and say, why is this working, or why didn't something work, but it always has worked. And I think that the same can be said for betas who get into a line of work, or they stumble into a lot of money, or or get them drunk. But in this case, we're saying where they stumble into some kind of money, they stumble into some kind of fame or some kind of social proof, where they're a celebrity. And so you're not going to tell that celebrity, you need to go and figure out why what you're doing is working and why it's not working. Because if it ain't broke, why fix it? Mm-hmm. So for these guys, for Harvey Weinstein, his game was, getting women on the casting couch and, basically telling them, if you don't suck my dick, you're not going to get this part, or you're not going to get this role. And if that keeps working for the guy, who am I or you or anybody else to say, dude, that's wrong, or that's, but it's not wrong to him because it's working for him, because he's getting that dopamine hit every time he gets his dick sucked. And all he has to do is go through the motions and go through the process and be the guy who he's the gatekeeper to fame and fortune. So what incentive does he have to really look inwardly and say, what I'm doing is wrong, and B, why is what I'm doing working in the first place? You're not going to tell that guy anything different, because it's not going to register for the guy.
So with all of these incidents of indiscretion coming out lately, do you think there's a reason why we're just hearing about this now? Like, this has happened for a long time. This is not something new. It's just, been swept under the rug. Mm-hmm. Do you think there's a reason why this is happening now in today's time?
I definitely think so, especially when you consider that we have put ourselves into what I call a feminine primary social order. And we have gotten to a point socially right now where women can feel comfortable in using, maybe a rape allegation from 20 or 30 years ago. And I think what was I just reading? Something about Roy, can't remember the guy's, Roy Moore or something like that. Mm-hmm. Who had just had a rape accusation from Debbie Gibson from back in like 1980. So it's like, what is the statutes of limitation for rape? What is the statute of limitations for any of that? And when you say there is none, what that does is it opens up the floodgates for any kind of indiscretion, and it just opens up the permissiveness for anyone to say, somebody raped me. I mean, Roosh has this great saying. It says today's "he didn't call me back" is "he raped me."
Right.
And so we get to a point where it's like women are so comfortable with making that charge or saying, I've been sexually harassed, or I had, improper advances made towards me by so and so, and you can ruin a guy's career that way, or you can ruin, I'm trying to think of, because there's, like I said, there's so many allegations right now, but I think that we're at a point societally right now where we defer so much authority and we defer so much attention to what women say. Like we were just 2 years ago, we were talking about the University of Virginia, I think, the rape allegations that were made by Rolling Stone and what was her name? Erdley. A woman who has admitted going and shopping for stories so that she can make, sensational rape accusations against guys and particularly against like hypermasculinity or that kind of, that kind of direction where they want that sort of retribution and restitution. But we get to the point where we're supposed to automatically believe any allegations. And even just the allegations right now is enough to destroy a guy's career, to destroy his personal life, to destroy any credibility that the guy had. It doesn't even have to have come true. All it has to be is an allegation. The thing I was going to say is that right now, particularly with these, hashtags like these Me Too hashtags and everything else, I think that the door has finally been, kicked open with the Harvey Weinstein thing. But I think that prior to this, even when you and I were at the 21 convention, we had the Las Vegas shooting that was going on. Horrible, horrific event, I understand. But what I noticed from that point in as far as the manosphere and as far as how our feminine primary social order goes, we have now shifted the narrative from being from worrying about toxic masculinity or hyper masculinity, and it's shifted over to any masculinity is now toxic. Any kind of conventional masculinity is now toxic. And with every new allegation, with every new Harvey Weinstein, with every new Louis CK, with any of those guys, as we keep going, it's going to be more and more that it's not masculinity is toxic. It's not that there's a toxic masculinity. It's that masculinity itself is toxic. And I think that is going to be the new battlefront coming in.
I think you're right.
Within the next couple of years.
I think you're right. All right, Rollo, I just want to thank you for your time today. Really appreciate that. Again, links are in the description below. If you guys have a comment, please do so. Leave something down there, smash the like button, and share this with somebody that might need to see it. Thanks, Rollo.